Okay, I just wanted to kind of wrap up at this point, and then we're going to go to any comments that you all have or statements, as well as questions that you might have for us. Anyone who was here last year, I hope, can see the difference in terms of how much we've gotten done over the last year, how much IMEDS has expanded, and as you can see going forward, they're filling out the evaluation component, and then really getting started on the education will be really important. As Ellen mentioned, the fellowships, we're looking for specifically at this point have interest from a couple of different cancers, diabetes, and a few other disease areas, and then also looking at it from an issue focus. So we may do across different diseases, but honing in on a specific focus area. In tuberculosis, we're about to encounter, we hope, our second round of funding, which we're very hopeful. And we'll continue our work in regulatory science and community engagement. And as Alicia talked about, we're in the process of talking to Gates about potentially a fellow that will help with regulatory science, as well as trying to come up with an evaluation system to see how community engagement impacts clinical trials, as well as a number of tools to improve community engagement, particularly in the 22 high-burden TB countries. And so those are things that we're continuing. New areas that we touched on. One is that we'll be talking later in an extended board meeting about broadening our educational efforts with FDA, and FDA has a lot of interest in that area, as do we, so we'll be broadening that. We're in the process of talking through with folks from FDA and other stakeholders, such as the Grocery Manufacturers Association and a number of fruit and vegetable associations. We're looking at a salmonella detection in produce project, which is something that's a priority for a number of these groups. And so next year, if you come, you'll probably hear a lot more about that, and we're refining the scope at this point. And then another initiative that we've just started in is something called CD3. And it's an actual device that FDA has created, and it's a low-cost, very convenient, easy-to-use device that detects counterfeit and adulterated drug products. And so we did an exploratory meeting with about 50 stakeholders to look at how we might optimize the products so they could be used in global public health. It's been, there's a CRADA now that's been signed with Corning to develop the device. But where we're going with it is we're going to be looking at, we think we're going to be looking at trying to figure out how do we involve global health. So we had the WHO and the World Bank and others there that have an interest in this so that it can be used in other parts of the world for public health reasons. And so that will be a public-private partnership as well. So where do we get ideas from? Again, I'll go all the way back to the beginning, from you, from FDA, from this board, others. And so I think with that, we had, go ahead.
I do want to take the time to thank staff. They have worked really, really, really hard, Jane and the wonderful staff at Reagan-Udall. This has been very challenging. We've had some very lean and difficult years, but finally we are getting it together, and I think we are really now positioned to do very important projects for public health, for the FDA, important science, and really have a major public benefit. So I just want to thank people for working really hard, and the board for sticking in with it, and Mark McClellan, our former director, who is still here and very much involved. So people have worked really hard, and we're very excited. So now we'd like to take questions, comments from you. I just ask for two things: that you identify yourself, and please don't take more than 3 minutes. But beyond that, please come up.
Hi, my name is Andrew Womack from the Biotechnology Industry Organization. So I think the fellowships program sounds incredibly exciting. I have a quick question, with the caveat that I have not yet read the information that Nancy said she had in the back, so that may already have been answered. But I'm interested in how the priorities for the fellowship will be developed. Is that something that the fellow brings themselves? Will that be a process within OTS or the review division at FDA? Will that be a Reagan-Udall process, or will it be a mechanism for public input on that? So what are some high priority areas where the fellow should focus?
Well, we're actually in the process of developing that right now, but it will be, up until now, and we've created some other documentation, it has been a joint project between Reagan-Udall, Alzheimer's, and FDA. And so as we finalize that, we will be looking for public input. And the person will live at the FDA and work for those folks, so they will do the day-to-day operation. But in terms of priorities, that'll also be part of the work of this fellow, which is going out and talking to all the stakeholders and trying to establish, what the scientific priorities really ought to be for this kind of liaison work and for having better cooperation between the scientific community outside the FDA and within the FDA. So yes to all of those things, basically.
Lisa, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have do you want to add to that? Because I know that FDA is very happy about this program, now that I put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, we are very happy. I couldn't tell if your question was just about the Alzheimer's Fellowship or about the fellowship program more broadly.
I think it's the evolution of the fellowship program. So will the expectations and outcomes in the future be used to drive evaluation of the candidates as well?
Absolutely. For every fellow on site at FDA, there will be an evaluation. It's written right into our MOU with the foundation. But we are engaged internally in developing our public health priorities for fellows. So I was struck that you mentioned the review division. We have foods, and foods is a very high priority for us. So I think you can expect from FDA a more global sense of what our public health priorities are. And then, of course, we have to match them with sponsors. So it'll be, I think, a robust and complicated project, which will involve public input into our priorities and our sense of our priorities, and this fabulous board sense of public health priorities as well.
Other questions?
I have the mic.
Now we need your name.
My name is Mark Frankel. I'm with the American Association for the Advancement of Science, also known as AAAS. I want to get a better feel of your outreach beyond your website. Many government entities, when they're developing research agendas, will issue announcements to the communities involved, asking for requests for information, for example, to sort of guide them. And many, once they decide on their research agendas, will issue funding opportunity announcements, requests for proposals. I'm not quite sure, they often do this to the Federal Register as well as the Loan Register. Does the foundation do that? And what else do you do in terms of outreach besides having a website?
Okay. We actually do use the Federal Register. For instance, when we start a project and we're looking for the steering committee, scientific committee, we will the Federal Register, explain the project, and then what sorts of people we're looking for. And again, the makeup of the steering committee and the scientific advisory committees are always broad, multi-stakeholder seats for each of those. So we start with that. And then, if you remember back in the process, when we were talking about the lay of the land and trying to figure out who all the partners are, we start with that group as well, and we start putting out outreach to all the folks that we think are involved in, particular issue or particular area. And then we ask that they also recommend other people. And so, for instance, in IMEDS, as we've gotten started, even though in some ways that's a fairly limited community that's interested in methods, we now have, I think, 2,500 people that get regular updates on what we're doing. The other part is as we develop the scientific agenda or policies, at many points during the process, we post that on our website. We do have some email lists for each project, and then a more global one that we're building, where we send out something and say, here's the next iteration of this particular scientific agenda or policy or whatever it is. Please come to our website and give us comments. And we actually get a lot of feedback from many people on all of those. But we're always open to any other ideas people have. We're trying to become a little bit broader, because obviously we want to get some people who maybe aren't normally thinking about these particular issues we might be able to bring in to help us work on some of these things. So we're working to develop that. So any ideas that you have, we'd be happy to take.
Yeah, I also want to say that we have been difficult. It's been difficult for us. We've had limited resources, funding, and the ability to do a lot. We haven't been able to have like an outreach stakeholder meeting to say, what are you thinking? You know, even just these public meetings, we work really hard to get people to come to them. And, you know, but we can, now that we have these projects and more staff and more robust infrastructure, we can and should do more outreach to the community. It's just been really hard, but clearly that would be very helpful. And, other questions?
Bob Meyer from the University of Virginia. Not a question, but maybe a suggestion for a potential future fellowship. So I'd heard, obviously, the fellowship that's being proposed is in the clinical space, and I think it's a great start. And I heard mention to clinical pharmacology and pharm-tox. I actually see a need potentially in the CMC area. With the breakthrough therapy pathway, I think we're seeing great advances in being able to develop the clinical database to get a product to market very quickly. And that's beginning to outstrip the ability of the manufacturing element to do the product development, scale up, and manufacturing. And I'm a little bit concerned that we may end up with a process where we have approved products that can't actually be made available to patients because of the manufacturing issues. So I just plant the seed that maybe there's a cross-cutting project, be it a fellowship or some other project, that may look at ways to make that a more robust, a more robust pathway from a manufacturing, so that that doesn't become the stumbling block to getting these important breakthrough therapies to patients.
Let me try to take that. As you know, a breakthrough came from a conference with friends in Brookings a long time ago, and we're all very excited. But I do remember when this was becoming a real possibility, we were besieged by manufacturing issues. We had no idea this would be such a big problem. And I remember going to a meeting at the FDA with 15 people from manufacturing, and they were all hysterical. So you're right, because if these are going to, the designation are going to be granted breakthrough status, if you can't get them to patients because of the manufacturing after they have hit the very high bar of efficacy, it's an issue. How that exactly can help or work within, you know, how we can do a fellow is another interesting question on it, but I think we all know this is a very, very important issue, and particularly as we start to see really orphan diseases and see, you know, smaller companies really getting the breakthrough. This even is a bigger challenge, so I think it is a real issue. Maybe we can convene some sort of stakeholder meeting or do something about it. It's a really important question. Others? I don't know, Mark, do you have a sense on this?
No, I think that I agree.
Yeah. I think there's another question here.
Hi, my name is Sarah Colina. I actually am working with the PCORI, but I'm actually here as a patient advocate. I was really excited to learn about the sort of the patient engagement that was built into at least one of the projects. But when I looked at the iMeds in particular, ultimately, in order to get questions that are really, really important to patients, we're gonna have to ask patients. And in order for patients to be meaningfully involved in this kind of project, which is completely doable and has, I think we have in many other examples shown very effective patient engagement that can be very valuable. But in order to tap into that expertise, we're gonna need training because this is tough stuff. I mean, to ask people to come in and comment on big data, what questions to ask, how to ask them, what kind of methods are gonna work. In order to have a really robust, diverse group of stakeholders, I think that it would behoove Reagan-Udall to provide a level of training. This is probably appropriate for stakeholders as well, because without that, and without that kind of training, you're not going to have the expertise that is needed to be meaningful.
Yeah, and that, as we try to get folks to be stakeholders or play that role, the patient or consumer role in iMeds, we found that this was not on a lot of people's radar screens, and I completely agree that we need to develop that and provide some training. And so that's one of the programs we've been contemplating, is how to do outreach into the consumer and patient advocacy communities, so that we can start to kind of get this science on their radar screen and start to develop some folks that have that kind of expertise, as we've done in other areas of science.
Diana.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a great
Sorry.
point, and I would love to talk to you about it after this meeting for a few minutes. But also, in a way, it's a similar point to Mark Frankel's, but from the other end, I think, from AAAS and patients. And so I don't think everybody here wants to, individually answer this question, but I would be interested how many people in the audience found out about this meeting or about Reagan-Udall Foundation in a way other than the Federal Register or knowing somebody on the board or on the staff. If you could just raise your hand, I think that would be helpful. Yeah, so we need to figure out a better way to do outreach, and it has been extremely challenging. I'm sure it will continue to be, but as we all know, not everybody reads the Federal Register or has a friend on the board.
Yeah, I just had a comment. I certainly agree with more efforts for outreach, and a lot of the organizations here who are connected with the foundation have lots of channels, and as you heard from Jane, there are not just the website, but the email updates and other updates from the foundation that we'd very much like to get out more widely. With respect to the specific issue of IMED's engagement of consumer groups, that's really important, because this is a complex area of data, and it is, I think, an increasingly important area of evidence where we really should be learning a lot more from safety experiences in actual practice. FDA has undertaken a number of activities related to the Sentinel program to engage consumers. It's not so much about training as it is getting input on the best ways to convey information that comes out of their work, and that's certainly something we can try to build on here. But I know you're connected with PCORI as well, given the shared interest in effective training, education, and engagement of consumers. It seems like a nice area for some joint work between the foundation and PCORI as well.
I want to say that I think there are lots of synergies between PCORI and Reagan-Udall. I sit on the board of PCORI, so I can say that kind of officially or not officially, because I can't speak for the board of PCORI or, frankly, Reagan-Udall. But having said that, it's important. I do think that we've tried very, very hard to send out meeting notices other than, from individual board members. We've engaged patient groups. We have listservs. We have a lot of data that we've tried to get out into the more public domain. We are resource thin. We don't have a communication department. It is really hard to do this. But as we get more and more projects, as we need broader and broader input, we are going to have to think about it, because we do, I think, probably sent out 3,000 emails to different patient groups and other groups, and more than that, to even come to this meeting, because the worst thing in the world we can do is have a public meeting without the public. So it is a challenge, and we need help from others on that, but we tried very hard, and I agree fully, the Federal Register isn't the way you're going to get broad stakeholder involved.
On the big data topic,
Announce your-
I'm sorry, is it not
Who
on?
are you?
Who are you?
No,
Your
just say
name.
who you
Oh,
are.
I'm so sorry. I'm Ellie Dehoney with Research America. Sometimes I forget my own name, so. I just think one of the things that's so terrific about what you're doing is that big data has so many more applications than just post-market surveillance, and that tools you're developing could be so useful for biomedical research, and the link between big data and genetics. And I was just wondering, how are you collaborating, or are you collaborating with some of the projects out there like UCSF and Kaiser, and because what you're doing, I think, will be so valuable for them.
So,
I think we're talking about
for just speaking from the IMEDS program and the mini Sentinel work and the databases that are being brought together to support evaluation research, many of those draw on participation from and collaboration with large organizations like Kaiser and others that are also investigating other kinds of questions, not just about safety, but about utilization patterns and, as you said, I think increasingly connecting to predictive and precision medicine approaches as well. So I do think there's a foundation for building on that. One of my hopes is that as the foundation does more to support other areas of safety work, it will be able to expand those connections as well. So you heard about the project on predictive toxicology,
Right.
which will involve different sources of data, potentially from some of those same large data system collaborators around genomic and other characteristics as well. But these are, as Troy and Dilbert eloquently described, these are very difficult challenges with implementation, and I think it's just highlights, given all of the interest in all of these groups in doing more, but given the challenges around making appropriate statistical inferences, around protecting privacy and confidentiality, around managing distributed or cloud-based systems. There are just all kinds of methodologic challenges that the entire field needs to focus a lot more on. So I think this is going to be a big challenge for the foundation, big challenge for our public health efforts in the years to come, and hopefully will remain a very active area for building up better knowledge.
I think you should be applauded, because for both of those projects, they do have applications into reducing the time for development of drugs. You're working on something that has to do with safety that has so many more implications for the patient. I just think that's terrific.
Kim McCleary with Faster Cures, and I'm also a PCORI ambassador, so I was happy for the question from Sarah, and glad to hear about the intersection. And my question is really about a couple of other intersections. One, how is Reagan-Udall interfacing with Representative Upton's initiative, the 21st Century Cures legislative process that just got underway last week? And then also a more specific question about the Alzheimer's Fellowship. Is there any planned or ongoing intersection with the NIH's Accelerated Medicines Project and its focus in Alzheimer's? Thank you.
So I can take the first one with the Energy and Commerce Committee. Jane and I met with them last week, I'm sorry, and told them about Reagan-Udall. They were very interested in what we're doing and the challenges, and I think this will be the first of many meetings. They are going to be meeting with the Foundation for NIH and others, and I think everyone understands the importance of collaboration. So there was that meeting, and it was a very good meeting. I think they were surprised to see, because they do know that we're very resource thin, that of what we've been able to do with very few resources. In terms of the Alzheimer's and how that works with the other program, I can't really answer that. Perhaps Jane.
Yeah. Yeah, let me just add one other Upton comment too, that after the meeting, we've already had many interactions with the folks that were in the meeting from Upton staff, because they're trying to get more and more data and trying to better understand big data in particular. And so we have another meeting set up where we're going to do some training with some of the folks that are scientists. So we're hoping to continue to provide information for them. And I know they want to speak to some other board members on the Reagan-Udall board as well. In terms of Alzheimer's, NIH is definitely one of the outreach areas that this person will begin in when they first hit the ground and kind of learn, what's what at FDA. Their whole focus is really on outreach and collaboration, and so that is definitely on one of the top of the list programs that's been identified.
Paul Seligman Amgen. On the topic of sort of collaboration, and particularly in international collaboration, I was was struck, of course, by the work being done on the TV end, and was curious in the areas of methods development and all the issues you're working on in terms of surveillance, the degree to which you have considered or looked at the work that's being done, for example, in Europe at the Innovative Medicines initiative, which is, again, a similar kind of public-private partnership, and whether there are opportunities to either leverage or use some of that, either that work or the consideration of kind of their research agenda and how you sort of structure the kinds of issues that you all work on.
Troy
Yeah.
or Mark or?
Just a general comment. I mean, they are, as you said, Paul, they are exploring some similar issues. At this point, as far as IMEDs go, the focus really has been on developing the US-based data sources. Those have some distinctive features from other countries with national systems and so forth. And that presents some special challenges, but also some real opportunities to get some more diverse data involved. I do think as a next phase of this work, exploring those international connections would be really useful.
Just one additional, or two additional things. We do have someone on the scientific advisory, I can remember which committee. The scientific advisory committee that is from Europe and is connected with, I believe, some of those initiatives. And then on the lab side, we have a data set that is a more international data set that we want to add into the lab that's on our slate for the next year to sort of increase that. So we're starting to make some outreach into that area. But as Mark said, we've mostly been US-centric, at least initially, but we are starting down that road.
Can I throw in a quick comment beyond, in addition to as far as engagement with IMI, in addition to the IMEDS project, on the PredictTalks project, one of our key collaborators at FDA is very involved with the eTalks IMI project. So we definitely will look to overlap and not, do redundant work on that one. So.
Any other questions?
Somebody.
Okay.
Mark Frankel again. The phrase resource thin has been mentioned more than once. What is your 2014 budget and how many staff do you support?
Let me talk about the staff for a minute first. We have an interesting combination of people. We have full-time staff, part-time staff, and then we have full-time contractors, part-time contractors. We also have the ability to get detailees from NIH and FDA, and we have done that. And we have one person that is seconded from industry working on a specific project. So with all of that said, we have all or part of 23 people at this point. A lot of it is skewed toward IMEDS. And we're in the process of doing a lot of fundraising right now. So I'll give you a range of where we think we're going to end up at the end of 2014, because I think that's a fair estimate. We believe that we'll be could be 8 to 15 million possibly, depending on some projects and whether they come through. So it depends.
Project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what would the budget?
Well, I mean, the way the budget breaks down is we have the operations and we get a transfer of money from the FDA. I think it's public, it was $500,000. And we can take a percentage of projects for the operations, but we need the ability to fundraise really, which is very difficult as anyone knows in the nonprofit, to raise for operations and staff, so we can really do more outreach, do more communication, and frankly, do more projects. That's the challenge.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that 2 years prior to this, we were at about $1 million, and we ended 2013 at about 4.2 million, and we're hoping we'll be at least twice that. So we're growing pretty quickly. Where we'll end up, I don't really know. But so as Ellen said, we get a certain amount of money between $500,000 and 1.25 as a transfer for overhead costs from the FDA each year. But then we take 15% of indirects off the projects and put that back in. And those are the funds we use not only for your normal overhead expenses, but to develop projects. and to work on things like communications and outreach. So we're fairly thin in that area. That's one of the challenges that we have.
Again, I would say that a lot of hard work from staff and frankly, board have been working too. So, you know, a lot of the board is very engaged. We use them. We try to be judicious of their time. We tell them if they go on the board, they won't have to work hard, but then we don't actually tell the truth. We do put them, we make them, we actually make them work very hard. And
You're scary.
And we, so if we recruit you, don't believe us. But truly, we need not only the input, we have a board with great expertise and great diversity, and it's really important that they work hard on this. So,
You know, we have gotten a lot of in-kind support from all the stakeholders, particularly scientifically, when we need something evaluated or we need a more thorough understanding of something as we're creating a budget. Some folks will step up and do some of the scientific work for us and pro bono. We have quite a bit of that going on as well.
any other questions?
Or comments?
Comments? So I really want to thank all of you for coming. I really, you know, we're very excited that you came, and we have most of the chairs filled. You know, we tried hard to get you here, but we hope this is the beginning, and that you can and will communicate with us if we need to have outreach. And we're very proud of the work, and thank you.
Thank you.
So.
Each year we have more.